Hey there, welcome to episode 133 of Mike's Collection. I'm Mike, and the part of my collection that I'm going to be talking about today is Masters of the Universe Origins Wave 3. So I've recently posted video reviews of Wave 1 and Wave 2, and I'm planning on shooting Waves 4 and 5 and the deluxe figures after this. So yeah, and we'll get all these Masters of the Universe characters out of the way, and then we can move on to other things like G.I. Joes and Transformers again. So yeah, if you've watched my previous two videos, you know what to expect here. Basically, I'm just going to show you the four figures from Wave 3, give you my thoughts on the characters, my history with the character, and just compare it to the action figures of previous lines. So the vintage figures, if I have them, or the 2002 figures, or the Masters of the Universe Classics. So yeah, that's what we're going to do. So without any further ado, why don't we dive right into it. So the first figure that we have to talk about in Wave 3 of Masters of the Universe Origins is Merman. Now Merman is my all-time favorite He-Man character. I absolutely love this guy. I've loved him from the first time I ever saw an image of him. I don't know if it was on the back of the package of another character, or maybe in a commercial, or maybe in like a Sears Christmas catalog or something. But as soon as I saw this fish guy, I immediately knew he was my favorite, and I wanted him pretty bad. And it was quite an ordeal to get the vintage figure when I was a kid. It's probably one of the earliest memories I have from my childhood is hunting down the vintage Merman figure. So, this guy here. This was actually one of the very first Origins figures I got. I don't know if I really touched on this in the first two videos when I talked about Wave 1 and Wave 2. But when Origins launched, it came out initially as a couple of like Comic-Con exclusives. And then the first year that they came out in 2020, they were Walmart exclusives. So you couldn't buy them from any online retailers. Or you couldn't buy them at Target or anywhere else. You had to buy them at Walmart, which that should be fine because there's plenty of Walmarts in my area. But I went through that whole year of 2020 and I did not see any He-Man figures. I saw everybody online was posting that they had Wave 1 and Wave 2, but yeah, I never saw any of them, and I was kind of giving up hope. I thought I was going to have to wait till 2021. Because the news was that pretty soon in 2021 the exclusive with Walmart would end and the figures would be available elsewhere. So I thought, well, maybe then that's when I'll get a chance to get them. And it was on like December 23rd of 2020. I was out getting some like my last little bit of supplies before the holidays, and I found Wave 3. So it's kind of weird that Wave 3 showed up before Wave 1 or Wave 2. But when I saw these guys hanging on the pegs, I was so excited. It was literally like a kid at Christmas. I grabbed them so quick, I felt like I was like committing a crime. I hoarded them, I threw them on my basket, and I put other things over top of them so nobody would steal them out of my cart. And I got home and I was super thrilled with them. And this Merman, even though I got it like pretty much the last week of 2020, it made it onto my best of list of 2020. Just because I was so nostalgically happy with this figure. So if we take a look at him, he's great. He's Merman. He's got everything that you remember about classic Merman. He's got this weird cat-like face, not exactly fishy, which was always kind of strange. He's got his yellow armor, this sword that always looked like a corn of cob, but I think was actually supposed to be seaweed or something. And yeah, he's got the same like kind of spiky arms as Skeletor had. Yeah, just a great figure. Like this guy a lot. Now, as I mentioned, he was my favorite character, and it did take me a little while to get the vintage figure when I was a kid, but I did get it, and I still have him, and he's still in okay shape. So here is my vintage Merman. This is the guy that I got when I was like 4 years old. So you can see here the bottom part of his armor piece is missing, this one here. His sword, I might still have it somewhere, but I don't have it with him. So at least his armor isn't missing completely. But yeah, the sword missing, that piece missing, that's unfortunate. His legs are a little loose. I'm worried that one day I'm going to take him out of the box and his legs are going to be snapped off, because that does tend to happen. But otherwise, there's a little bit of paint rub on the orange paint around his eyes. But otherwise, I say he's in pretty good shape. So I don't know if I can get him to stand here. But there you go. So you can see the similarities between the Origins figure and the vintage figure. Now, they look pretty similar. If anything, and I've commented on this in my past videos, the Origins versions are a little softer. They are less detailed than these guys here. They seem to be kind of intentionally simple, which I think it really works for some figures. I don't mind that they look a little simpler than their vintage counterparts. But Merman, maybe it's just because my standards are high. This figure is not as good as this figure, which is like, almost 40 years older than that. So that seems kind of a shame. Like just even the sculpting in the armor here, like it seems soft. Like none of these little indents seem as deep as they do on this one here. So this one casts a little bit more like shadow or something, but these ones don't. It's all very kind of flat. The face sculpt. This guy looks a little bit more menacing than this guy. Like the paint, it's not as dark and orange as this, and I think that orange makes his eyes really pop on this version. Whereas here the eyes kind of just get lost in that yellow, and it doesn't work as effectively. So I was excited just to get a Merman, but honestly, I don't know. If I got this guy earlier in the year and had time to really think about it, I don't know if he would have made my best of 2020 list. I still think this is a cool figure, and he may very well have. But he's not like, they didn't knock it out of the park with this guy. For this being my favorite character, I would have liked something a little bit more. Now, I'm kind of jumping the gun here, but they actually did release a new version of Merman in Wave 5. So I'll talk about that figure when I do a video for Wave 5. Just set him here like that. But I'm just going to quickly bring him in here. Here's the Wave 5 Merman from Masters of the Universe Origins. And I think this guy is far superior to this one. So that's Wave 3. That's Wave 5. What a difference a couple of waves make. He's way more detailed. The eyes pop. The armor is more detailed. Everything about this guy is just way better. But we'll talk about that a little bit more in Wave 5. So, for comparisons. So you've seen how he holds up compared to the vintage guy here. So next up, I've got the 2002 version, sculpted by the Four Horsemen. So this one here is a really great look. I was super excited about this figure when it first came out, because Merman, as much as I loved the vintage Merman figure here, it always did look kind of weird that his face looked kind of cat-like when the packaging, like the artwork on the back of the packaging, made him look much fishier. It's actually pretty much exactly what this looked like. That looked like what Merman was on the package. So why did he look like that on the packaging and then look like a cat when you got him in person? I don't know. So this is the first time Merman really got to look like Merman. Now obviously this is a little bit more of an updated, a little more detailed, a little sleeker than the vintage packaging artwork. But yeah, I was just really excited to get this new version of Merman. I thought he was awesome. And I liked that he was a little skinnier. Like he wasn't as beefy as He-Man and Skeletor. The vintage figures all shared the same body, so they were all big, hulking He-Men. But it would make sense that a fish guy would not be a big meathead. So I liked that this guy, he's still muscular. He's still got like killer abs there under his armor. But I like that they had different body types. I like that he had this more detailed armor. So this was an awesome, awesome figure. Now what came next was the classic figure in like 2009. And this was a great figure, because this kind of gave you the best of both worlds. So he's got armor similar to the vintage figure, and it's yellow as opposed to... They tried something new with this one with the gold armor, which looks cool, but I like the classic yellow. Also, they gave him a trident for the first time, which seems kind of synonymous with undersea characters. So that was the first time he got it in 2002, and now that has carried over with pretty much every future version of Merman. So here he has with the trident with the classics, although he still has his little sword that plugs into his back armor. The armor here, they elaborated on it with these teeth around it and stuff, which they borrowed from the 2002 design. So yeah, really great stuff. And the other thing that was really cool about this figure is that he came with 2 heads. Now, I currently have him displayed with a head that's accurate to the vintage toy. But they also gave us a head that matched the packaging. Now, I have it tucked away. I didn't get it out. But I do have this exact same figure in a repaint in blue, which matched some of the promotional artwork. And I have the blue one displayed with the more fishy head. So on this green one here, I could display him with this same head in green, which I actually do prefer this head. But since I've already got the blue guy with that head, I kind of like having them different on my shelf. So yeah, this is the exact same figure as that, just with a new paint job and the alternate head. So yeah, great figure. I love all these guys. It's obvious why Merman's my favorite. He's clearly the coolest Masters of the Universe character. Now, I've said in past videos that the Filmation figures, which are figures produced by Mattel and Super 7, based on the old 80s cartoon, are usually the best versions of any given character. I love those animated look figures. So we did get a Filmation Merman, and I absolutely love it. But I don't know if I like it more than the classic design. The classic one looks great. But here is animated Merman. So again, an awesome look. And again, it's a pretty different look. So, you know, Merman had the distinct look from the toy when I was a kid, a very distinct look in the cartoon, and another very distinct look from the packaging and the mini comics and stuff. So now I have the best of all worlds. You know, I've got the choice to display him how I want. So you can see this guy here, he's got the same similar designs, except everything's much simpler. That way it would be easier for the animators to draw instead of something complicated like this. But yeah, just a really, really cool figure. I love all these Mermen, and yeah, great figure. Good way to start Wave 3. So Merman was the only evil character in Wave 3 of Masters of the Universe Origins. The other 3 characters in the wave were all good guys. So first up, we're going to look at Roboto. So Roboto is, as his name implies, a robot character. And he's pretty cool. I did not have the vintage Roboto, neither did my brother. But he looked a lot like this. And his main play feature was he has these gears in his translucent chest. And when you turned his waist, the gears would turn. And hopefully you're still seeing that with the glare. But he still retains that play feature. And also when you turn his waist, you can see his like mouth, I guess we'd call that. His mouth goes up and down. So yeah, it's pretty cool because not all of these Origins figures are retaining the action feature of the vintage toy line. But with Roboto, they did, and I'm glad that they did. So yeah, he's pretty cool. Now, I don't know, like I'll show you a picture here of the vintage toy, obviously, but since I never owned it, I don't have a clear memory in my mind what it looked like. Like I know it kind of looked like this, but I don't know if the blues and reds were darker or lighter. I don't know if there's any glaring differences between this one and that one. But from memory, I think this guy looks pretty close. And yeah, there's, what can I say about him? He has interchangeable hands the same way Trapjaw does. So I've got him with this hook hand. Now, unfortunately, he does not have a belt to store his extra parts like the way the Trapjaw figure did. So he does have some extra pieces. I'm not sure where they are right off the top of my head. Let me see if I can dig those out. So here are Roboto's extra arms. So he's got a double blaster hand and an axe hand. So whichever you prefer, you can pop this off, stick that in there like so. And there you go. They're all pretty cool options, but you got to settle on one. So I had him with the hook, but who knows? Maybe I'll keep him with the gun here for a while now. So since I don't have the vintage figure to show you, the first comparison I can do is with the 2002 version that was sculpted by the Four Horsemen. And this guy is really cool. So here is Roboto. Now, I think for the first time his face is clearly defined. it was a little unclear to me on the vintage toy what was going on with him here. Like, I wasn't sure if this blue visor was his eyes. Like, basically that would be a helmet just like Robocop. And then is that black void his, like, mouth? Is that like an opening? And then this little red bit here covers his mouth? Like, is that his jaw? Like, I don't know. It's just a little unclear to me what's going on with this guy's face. And it always has. But with this one here, I think it's much more straightforward. You can see, like, this visor here is clearly his eyes. The jaw thing here does move, but he doesn't really have an open mouth besides. So when the character talked, the jaw moved, but there's no questioning what's going on with his face. So I do prefer this design. Anyway, they took the classic or the vintage look and they just amped it up. Like, he looks great with this extra bit of shoulder armor, which bulks him up. His arms, he's got all this cool sculpted detail in there. He still has the clear chest with the gears, and they still turn when you turn his waist. And then this is my favorite bit about him. I love those big, gigantic feet. I love characters that have these big, monstrous feet. I think it looks really cool. And plus, it gives them a nice, solid base. As a toy collector, I hate when my toys fall over. There's nothing worse, and it's happened to me even while I'm shooting this video. I've got toys everywhere. When I try and reach and grab one of my old toys for comparison, I'm bound to knock something else over. And, you just dread. It's like, oh no, it's going to be like dominoes. Is somebody going to hit the floor? Is somebody going to break? Well, when you have a figure with feet like this, you don't have to worry about Roboto going anywhere. And I love that. I think he had interchangeable hands too, but he does have this projectile thing too. So that's a new thing that the 2002 Roboto had. Now, I wasn't able to get the Classics version of Roboto. That is one of the big holes in my Classics collection, which was a huge bummer. That was one of the figures that just sold out very quickly, and I was never able to snag it. And what's even more of a bummer is the Classics figure, when it was released, had a head that was like this. Which, as I stated, sure, that's his, iconic head, but I never really liked it all that much. But then what they did is they released a pack of heads, and the heads were modeled after the 2002 looks, because they knew the 2002 look had a lot of fans. So they released a pack of just 5 heads, which was updated looks for Grizzlor, for Snout Sprout, a couple others, and Roboto. So I bought the head pack. So I actually have a nice head, a newer version of this head, which is bigger and would fit on a Classics figure, but I was never able to get the Classics version, so I've just got this loose Roboto head going to waste. So that's a real shame, because if I did have the Classics Roboto, I probably would have replaced this style head with this one. Anyway, fortunately, just before the Classics line fizzled out, Super 7 did put out a Filmation version of Roboto. And so as long as I have the Filmation version, I don't really feel like I have that glaring hole in my Classics collection anymore, because the Filmation version is a good stand-in. So here is Filmation Roboto. And you can see he looks a lot like the Origins figure, like the vintage figure, just a little simpler. And not even that much simpler, because this figure is pretty simple anyway. But even here, the details and stuff that are sculpted in his arm, this guy doesn't have any of that, because he's modeled after the cartoon design. So they want to keep things nice and simple for the animators. So he's much smoother, much sleeker. And yeah, it's a cool look for Roboto. This is the first one, I believe, where the gears don't turn. Because yeah, he doesn't swivel at the waist. And he doesn't have any gimmicks. There's no knobs to turn or anything. So the gears are all there, but they don't turn. And also the mouth doesn't open. This is the first as well. So yeah, a pretty cool figure. It's not the best of the Filmation figures, but I'm glad that they released it, so I was able to fill that hole in my collection. Anyway, there you go. That is Roboto. So next up is He-Man's sister, Shera. Now, I did not have the vintage Shera figure. I didn't have any vintage Shera figures. So there was the He-Man cartoon, and there was the corresponding He-Man toy line. And then there was a Shera cartoon, which did cross over with the He-Man cartoon. But the toy line was quite separate. The Princess of Power toy line were more dolls. So they all had rooted hair that you could comb. And even the bad guy characters like Hordak and his evil horde, they were, even though they only starred in the She-Ra cartoon, they were packaged as part of the He-Man line. It's like Mattel didn't want to confuse parents or scare parents by putting some of these scary monster characters in She-Ra packaging. They pretty much kept the She-Ra Princess of Power toy line into strictly dolls with combs. And so I never had any of those. I wasn't interested. I did have some of the evil horde members that were She-Ra's enemies in the cartoon, but I just used them with my He-Man figures, as I think Mattel was basically intending. So yeah, no vintage She-Ra figures to show you. There was a She-Ra in the 2002 line, but I think that was a convention exclusive, and I never got that. So my first ever She-Ra figures in my collections came as part of the Classics line, around 2010 or something like that. So we'll get to them in a moment. So first, let's take a look at this figure. So she is kind of petite, but that's similar to the female figures that we looked at in the Wave 1 video. So Teela and Evelyn. I imagine she probably uses, I don't know, not necessarily the same parts. Maybe like her upper legs and her upper arms, some of that stuff is probably the same. But, all these other parts here, her armor and her boots and everything, those are all unique to She-Ra. She's got a unique head sculpt with sculpted plastic hair. Now, one of the Origins figures that they first released was a convention exclusive, and it was this figure except with rooted hair that you could comb. So if you were a fan of the vintage dolls, maybe you would have preferred that She-Ra, but I like this one here with the plastic hair. It just matches up with the other figures in the line a little bit better. So I'm happy that they released this one at retail rather than the rooted hair version. She does have a soft goods cape, which is cool. It's got this kind of little shimmer to it. She's also got some weird little soft goods around her skirt and around her neck. Sword, shield, and then she's got these glittery stickers on her belt and on her headpiece here. And that just kind of pops off. So there you go. You can see She-Ra without her helmet. She also has the option, you can display it this way because her little mask, which is something that the vintage figure did. Anyway, I guess that's kind of cool. So it's a decent figure. I probably should have figured this out by now, but when I did the video for my Wave 1 figures, I tried to pop Teela and Evelyn's arms out because all the male figures in this line have interchangeable pieces. I assume the females do too, but when I tried to pull on her arms, they didn't want to come out and I didn't want to force them. So I kind of intended to, Google it or whatever just to see if I was right. And I forgot to do that. So I still don't know if her parts are interchangeable. If they are, that means you could stick Evelyn's arms or maybe her legs on this body. I'm pretty sure you can at least swap out the heads because I think the heads are just on ball joints. But I'm not going to recommend you start pulling your She-Ra figures apart until you maybe confirm online that you can do that. Anyway, so for comparison figures, the first one I got was this one here. So actually the first She-Ra figure I got was Bubble Power She-Ra, which was a She-Ra figure I didn't like as much, but that was the first one that was available when I started buying the Classics figures. And so I picked her up just so I would have a She-Ra in my collection, but I was much happier when I was able to get a more standard version of She-Ra. So this is what she looked like, kind of what she looked like kind of in the cartoon. Not exactly, because we're going to get to that in a second, but so this is a nice figure. She's got a plastic cape rather than soft goods, sculpted hair instead of rooted hair. She's got a pretty face. It's a really nice figure. It's definitely better than the Bubble Power one. My favorite version of her was actually her in her civilian identity. I have an Adora figure, which is actually the best looking one. But yeah, this is a pretty good She-Ra. And then I also have the Filmation version that Super 7 put out. And it's good, but it could have been great. When they showed kind of prototype pictures of this figure, it looked stellar. Like it leapt right off of the screen of the cartoon. And then when it arrived, it kind of had the paint apps just weren't as nice. Like her eyes were a little farther apart. I still think it's a pretty good figure. And maybe if they hadn't showed us those prototypes, nobody would have been the wiser. But it clearly didn't live up to what they showed us as a prototype, so it really disappointed a lot of people. But I still think this is a pretty good figure. I probably prefer it over the Classics one. I just like the brighter colors on this one. So they're all pretty good. Out of the three, yeah, I think this guy's my favorite. But yeah, pretty good figures. And this one here is a decent figure as far as the Origins line goes. So the last figure that we're going to look at in Wave 3 is Zodac. Now Zodac is kind of a weird character. He was never really portrayed as one of the good guys. Like, he wasn't on the battlefield fighting alongside He-Man and Teela and Ram-Man and all those guys. He was more of this like cosmic entity who just kind of appeared and gave advice and stuff like that. But that's not how we used him when we were kids. Now Zodac, my brother Doug, owned the vintage figure, and he was my brother's favorite good guy. Trapjaw was his favorite bad guy. Zodac was his favorite good guy. For me, it was Merman and Buzz-Off. Anyway, so Zodac was often one of the main heroes of our playtime because Doug always kind of made him the star, usually more so than even He-Man, because Zodac was just cooler looking, I guess. So I don't have the vintage Zodac to show you. I imagine my brother still has his vintage Zodac, but I'm not sure. Anyway, it looked a lot like this figure. As with all of the Origins figures, they do a good job of recreating the vintage toy line, just with the added articulation. But even this here, like the hairy back and the hairy chest, you can kind of see it poking out under his armor here. That was a calling card of Zodac. Just like, you don't see that a whole lot in action figures. Even though, I probably had lots of action figures of, guys either with their shirts off or short sleeves or something. Toy designers don't often sculpt hairy chests and hairy arms and stuff. So Zodac was kind of unique in that sense. It was kind of strange. And he's a weird character in that, he seems very humanoid with the hairy chest and the flesh tone. But then they gave him the kind of arms with the protrusions like Skeletor and Merman and stuff have. So that made him seem a little monstrous. And he had the monstrous Skeletor feet with the 3 toes. So you were kind of left to wonder, like, what is this guy's deal? Like, what does he look like under that mask? Is it a human face or is it something totally different? It was kind of mysterious, and you never really knew. And that's kind of what made him cool. It's like with Boba Fett. You never knew what was under the helmet. Now that you know what's under the helmet, it's kind of a little less mysterious. It's a little less cool. But, yeah, anyway, with Zodac, that was one of the appealing things about him, is that you didn't know what was going on under his mask. Now, that did change in the 2002 line. So Zodac looked pretty different in 2002. And here he is. So you can see here they changed him over. He is now African American. And he's got all these bright blue tattoos. And they glowed when he performed his magic. So these are kind of tribal tattoos that were part of his mystic magic. I don't know, it's been a while since I watched the cartoon. But it was an interesting choice, and I really like this look for Zodac, and this is a really cool figure. As with all of these 2002 figures, I thought it was a really cool design. They just amped up the details, made him a little more unique, where the vintage figures all shared the same bodies, so they all were very similar. This guy here, you can see he's got a lot more detail here in his shorts. I like the metal gloves. He's a little more techie looking. The boots, instead of the 3 toes, he's got these boots here. Very cool. Now, one thing that's interesting is for the first time we really get to see what he looks like under the helmet, and he is just a dude. So he's a human character. Now, it's obviously a lot more straightforward on this version because he doesn't have those weird forearms or the 3 toes. So yeah, it seems obvious that this is a guy. I don't know if we've ever 100% got it cleared up what this guy's deal is. But they actually, I think they did it in the cartoon in 2002, but they actually made this a separate character from him. That guy is Zodac with I believe that's the one with a C, and this is Zodac with a K at the end. And they are, I can't remember if it's brothers or they're just members of the same race or whatever it is. But they are unique characters. They're not supposed to be the same guy. This is a really cool figure. He does have kind of an annoying action feature, so his arm keeps springing back. But the worst thing about this figure is his head. It's sculpted facing downward. It doesn't move, like turn side to side, but he's always staring at the ground. And then when you put his helmet on and you're covering up his nose to match the vintage look, like he's just staring at the ground. It looks pretty bad when he's displayed on a shelf or something. So yeah, a weird choice. Anyway, what's cool is in the Classics version that came out in, around 2010, 2011, is we got this Zodac with a C and this Zodac with a K. Completely different characters, and I really wanted them both, but I missed out on both versions. I actually have this guy's head, because I think when they originally released him, he had a head with the helmet attached, and then they released a unhelmeted head separately with another character, and I was able to get that head. So I have a head that looks like this in the classic style, and I just have nothing. I have no body to put it on, which is a real shame. And so this is another like glaring hole in my Classics collection, is I don't have either version of Zodac. So that's a huge bummer. I don't have any Classics versions to show you at all. Now, one thing I can bring in here, this is another character that I guess is maybe supposed to be from the same cosmic race as these guys. One thing they did in the Classics line is they made all kinds of weird, obscure characters that appeared in some of the mini comics, or maybe even appeared in promotional, like prototype drawings and stuff, characters that never really saw the light of the day. And I can't remember off the top of my head what this guy's deal is, but this is a character called Stobo. And so he has Zodac's head, just painted differently. And then he's got this weird mirror in his chest. And then he's got a cape. And yeah, it's really weird because he's got this flesh tone body with this weird mirror protruding out of it. It's a very strange choice. Like if his body had been, any other color, so then you didn't think this was his skin, then you'd think, yeah, okay, they built this circular thing into his costume. But yeah, it seems to be growing right out of his chest. It's very strange. But that's because it's based on, a drawing or something that existed. So they just went with what the drawing was. So again, I can't remember what this guy's deal was. He's not a version of Zodac. So I didn't even necessarily need to bring him out here. But this gives you some idea of what the classic Zodac would have looked like, because he would have had this head and, similar scale and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, real bummer I don't have the Classics Zodac. And even in the 2002 version, knowing that this is a different character, I technically have not had the original Zodac in my collection ever until right now. So that's one of the reasons I was really stoked about getting this guy. This is my first time owning Zodac with a C, and I think he's pretty great. And before I go, I guess I'll just mention he has a fun little gun, which matches up with the vintage toy. So there you go. That is Zodac, and that is the last figure from Masters of the Universe Origins Wave 3. So that was my review of Masters of the Universe Origins Wave 3. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please make sure to hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, leave me comments below, and check out my other videos. So I will be back. As I mentioned in the intro, I'll be back very soon with a review of the Wave 4 figures, so keep your eyes peeled for that. If you subscribe to the channel, you don't even have to keep your eyes peeled because YouTube will let you know when it's posted. So yeah, why don't you do that? Anyway, I will see you then. Thank you very much for watching. Have a good one.